Dr. Maxwell Maltz was the author. He had written a number of books prior to this. One of the reasons he put together the book was because he had patients who came to him who had ears that were too big, or they had scars and so on. And as a result of that, they had confidence issues. They didn't see themselves as worthy, as lovable, likable, and so on. He would then go in and eradicate the scar, fix the disfigurement, and so on, and give the person his or her life back. The person became happy, there was a personality transformation, and so on. But then there were people who stumped him because he would eradicate the scar, fix the nose, reduce the chin, whatever it was, and the person didn't have a change in personality. And there was the one key story he would tell of the woman who said that, I don't see a difference. I don't notice a difference. He was flabbergasted by this, and he held up before picture and after picture to show her the visual proof and say, come on. Well, all right, I see a difference, but I don't feel any different. This led to him exploring the psychological side of the equation. He realized that 0.5% of the population can use some kind of plastic surgery to enhance something. You had a big ugly mole or something, or you had what you used to call a hair lip, now they call a cleft lip, or your ears were too big. And the person could use that surgery and benefit from it. But the 99.5% of the population had what he called internal scars. That there wasn't anything wrong with them externally, but internally they had feelings of failure, of not being good enough, lack of confidence, prone to anxiety, depression, worry, and so on. So in his study back at the time, he came across a field called cybernetics. When you hear the name of the book today, you might think, oh, that's Dianetics. No, it's not Dianetics. And second, you might think, what the hell is that? But in 1960, when cybernetics first came out, it was a big term. And people hear the title of the book today and think, man, that's a really bad title for a book. It's, man, if you could only be so lucky to write a book with such a bad title that it sold 35 million copies. So, titling a book that sells from word of mouth alone, primarily, that well, that's not an easy task. So when the book came out, it was gobbled up by athletes, salespeople, entrepreneurs, lawyers, all across the board. And this led then to a revolution in mind power, let's say. Tony Robbins, I went to his event in 1989, I believe. I think 1989. He was new on the scene then. So we're looking at almost 30 years prior. What Dan Kennedy, who sold me the business, I bought it from him in 2005. I ran it for 2 years prior to that. But what Dan always said is that everything else you see out here is really a spin-off of what Maltz came out with in Psycho-Cybernetics. And is that 100% true? Well, it's close enough. Hypnosis was here before Psycho-Cybernetics, but Psycho-Cybernetics encompasses hypnosis, but actually goes beyond it. And that's where I explain to people. I just had a coaching call with an acupuncturist out in San Diego. He's also a martial artist and a fighter, and he gets into the ring and so on. And he's asking me all these questions about visualization. And he has done all of these other many of these other programs prior to hooking up with me, and his mind was blown in a 20-minute call. When we speak, it's an hour. He's, I have different levels, but he was 20 minutes. It was just astounding, especially with this idea that everybody can be taught to visualize. And I gave him some introductory exercises on it. But the key is understanding that we're picturing. Maltz was famous for what's called self-image psychology, meaning that inside our brain we have an image of who we are and where we think we belong. And if we go beyond who we think we are, we'll get snapped back into something that's consistent with that image. If we fall below the image, we'll push ourselves to get back to it. So this is oftentimes translated as into income. More money. See, but that's not the only thing. In fact, the most important image is the image you have of yourself, not of how much money you make. And this is in the preface to the book, the last two paragraphs in the preface. He speaks about the people who are only pursuing material gain and trophies and badges of honor and so on. It ultimately leads to frustration and neuroticism and emptiness. But the person who makes the image of the self predominant, meaning how you see yourself as a person, not with the trinkets and toys, but just how you see yourself, that's most important. And as a result of that image growing and being positive and powerful, all the trinkets, the awards, the money, and so on that you think is so important actually starts to pursue you or come to you with a hell of a lot less effort than what you were putting into it. That is a part. There's a lot to it, but that gives a screenshot of what it is and how it works. There are 4 what I call pill errors, not pillars, pill-error, of people who are talking about Psycho-Cybernetics in their own coaching programs and seminars, but they, in my opinion, being the owner or the person who studies it more than anybody, has access to all the files, they are botching it. They're screwing it up. And the first way I let people know this is that whenever you hear one of these 4, or usually all 4 of these pill errors, you know you're not really getting Psycho-Cybernetics, because there's nowhere in the book that teaches it. So the first is that you need to have a big, hairy, audacious goal, or you got to think really, really big. The second one is that you need to, how do I say it? You got to set goals that scare you. Can't just set a goal. It's got to scare you. The third is that you have to take massive action. And the fourth is that you have to get out of your comfort zone. So I can, in a matter of minutes, take somebody who absolutely 100% believes those ideas, with a few questions, have that person proving to himself or herself from their own life experience, not from what's in a book, but from their own life experience, that doesn't actually work for them. So the opposite. So when you think big, you stumble on every twig. When you think small, you realize you can have it all. So you take things one day at a time. So you're freaking out about what's going on in the country or in the world. You're not going to make things better by thinking too far ahead. You do need to think ahead, but you also got to take care of today. So if you take on a martial art and you immediately, man, I want to be the best in the world at this. Then you think about, oh, I'm 45. How am I going to be the best in the world at this when other people are starting out at 5? Now you've created this anxiety and turmoil and this hurry up and you've created this fear and panic response. So it doesn't mean that you don't have any big goals. What it means is that the majority of your focus needs to be on accomplishing goals today. You get really good at accomplishing a goal today, you create positive momentum. You're on a roll. But if everything is way out in the future and you don't have any sense of accomplishment on a daily basis, you start to build negative momentum. And you go downhill and you get into a slump. So when it comes to setting goals that scare you, that one is really easy to take down because it's ridiculous. When you have a fear, fight, or flight response, or freeze, fear, flight, or freeze response, you're not doing anything. It's not good to be in a sense of panic. We don't think as well. We can't memorize and learn something when we're full of anxiety and full of stress nearly as fast as we can when we're calm. And how exactly is being filled with emotional tension and turmoil going to help catapult you to the next level when all your experience in life of learning things and making progress is when you do it from a feeling of comfort? So that leads us to number 3. You got to get out of your comfort zone. Why would you need to do that? Because otherwise you won't do anything. You'll just sit and watch TV and eat potato chips, so on. Well, that's not the way I see it. There's 2 comfort zones. There's the internal comfort zone and there's the external comfort zone. So people mistakenly think that there's only one. They think, get out of my comfort zone. So I ask, did you do the 5-gallon ice cold water challenge to bring awareness to Lou Gehrig's disease and ALS? Did you do that? Did you grab the 5-gallon bucket of water and lift it over your head, ice and water, and dump it over? No, I didn't do it. Why not? It's cold. It's too cold. So you're uncomfortable with that. So you think the people who did this were comfortable? You think that they were comfortable getting cold with 5 gallons? How about the people who sit in an ice cold water bath for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes or longer? And it's 55 degrees, maybe a little bit less. You think that's comfortable? It's not. But why are they doing it then? Because internally, they think it's a great idea. Internally, they're really comfortable with the idea of making themselves uncomfortable, physically. Now, this acupuncturist who's also a fighter says, well, you know, I actually don't agree with that, because when I get into the ring to fight, I'm actually a little bit emotionally uncomfortable with that. I said, but do you enjoy that? Oh yeah, of course. Well, there we go again. So we peeled it back another layer, and we see that he's comfortable being nervous, and he's comfortable getting in the ring to fight. So, then number 4 is the idea that you got to take massive action. Well, if we just look at nature, human nature, animal nature, anything in nature, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to live 2 days at a time. You don't get 2 breaths at a time. You don't get 3 or 4, and you can only take 1 step at a time. Even if you put both feet together and say, aha, I got you. I'm going to jump. So I get 2 steps that way. Well, first of all, is that step really that much further than the 1 at a time? And second of all, if you're going to jump with 2 feet forward, how many jumps do you get? Even you and Kyle with your 8.5-minute squats straight.
Actually, I was only 4.
You were 4. Kyle did 8.5. See,
Yeah.
that's both legs up and down, not one leg at a time walking, but so we could say maybe you're an ultra marathoner, maybe you can last 10 or 15 or 20 minutes jumping forward with both feet before you say, the hell with this. Walking one step at a time, actually I can go on for 10 miles, maybe 5 miles. So slow it down. Most people are unconsciously not realizing they're slowing themselves down by trying to go fast. It seems antithetical or paradoxical to say one step at a time, one breath at a time. But when people start to embrace this, they find their results improve. They find that they're getting more done quicker. So John Wooden, famous coach of the UCLA Bruins in basketball back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, won 10 NCAA championships in 12 seasons. He used to say, make haste slowly, which other people have said it as well. So I'm not sure he came up with that one. But the one that he is given credit for is be quick, but don't hurry. Same idea. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So why would you try to take 100 steps at a time? The whole idea is getting out of the frustration zone. Go ahead.
So, Matt, one of the things that I've talked to you about a lot, and is the difference between in the levels of confidence, and there's sometimes where certain situations where you feel confident, and then there's other situations where you don't. And what Psycho-Cybernetics talks about is they use the word stabilize self-confidence, right? And where you're not like overconfident in one situation, and then another situation you get in, you're not like confident at all. Like, how can you, what do we need to know about confidence and how that, because a lot of us are, going through challenging times as business owners, and like when our business is down, it tends to shake confidence, it tends to shake the belief, that we have in ourselves. What from your toolbox, and I know a lot, can you help us with, and we're going through, guys have businesses, George down there, his business is closed for a second time now. A lot of us were closed for 6 months. That tends to wear on you. Like, what are ways and strategies that we can use to stabilize that self-confidence in times that are hard?
Well, first of all, confidence is going to ebb and flow. But you can stabilize it where it's growing. So there's always going to be something that can knock you down a few pegs. That's life. So to think of it in terms of happiness, there's no way to make somebody happy 100% of the time for the rest of his or her life. The same with confidence. There are going to be times where you're starting to lose it. The key is you recognize it. And when you recognize it, you grow bigger energetically. So the metaphor is, if I have this bottle of water here, and it holds a little over a liter, or I could have one of those little Dixie cups of water. Those are two different images, but they relate to what we're talking about. When you are filled with confidence, it's, you're not just this liter of water, you're a big barrel, a 5-gallon drum of water. When you are losing it, you're this Dixie cup. And that is how you see yourself. When you are in an activity that you're involved in, or simply reliving a memory of when you were at your best, you'll notice that you're big in the image. When you think about the times where you don't have confidence, or you project yourself into something where you feel incompetent or lacking in confidence, you actually energetically, physically and energetically start to shrink. And I noticed this one time. I was in Australia and I was speaking on the stage, and I was just kicking butt. I had everybody in the palm of my hands, and then it came time to close. And that big, strong, confident person just shrunk. Absolutely just shrunk. And I was stunned when this happened. I couldn't put my finger on it. Why did it happen? How did it happen? And so on. It was almost as though I got compressed. And that's really what happens. And it was a wonderful thing over time to happen to me, because I realized that when the going gets tough, it's when you need to grow some backbone. We have that saying, see? Grow some backbone. So you can see I'm actually articulating my spine and I'm growing taller. I do that first by thinking it. But now, in terms of your imagery, you start seeing yourself in the future, what you want to do. You see yourself 10 feet tall. Not your height. So if you're 6'2", when you picture yourself in your mind's eye, you don't see yourself as 6'2". Why? Because that isn't going to fire up the brain and your emotional state nearly as much as when you see yourself 10 feet tall. You see yourself 10 feet tall, all the neurons in the brain start having a bonfire.